Hey guys, welcome back to 10 Outdoors, and today we're going to be doing something special by popular request, and that is how to build a tip down. And the main reason we're showing you guys is because when we looked at actually how much some of these tip downs are going for, it's 40, 50 bucks for one, and that's honestly ridiculous. So we want to make sure our subscribers and our viewers are not paying that absurdly high price. We want to make sure you guys can afford to build 3, 6, 9, even 12 tip downs for the price of one. And so with that, we're going to show you how we make our tip downs, which you probably have seen in some of our other videos between all these right here. But with that, we're going to be showing you how to build a tip down. And a special thanks to my dad for kind of doing this initial design and going from there. So he's going to be doing. Before we get started with this video, don't forget to use proper PPE so that none of you guys get hurt trying to build a tip down. To get started, here are a list of the things you're going to need, and this is per one tip down except for things that you usually can't buy in like a one increment with the boards and then the aluminum and brass rods. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to rip our 1x6x8 board into 1-inch segments, which will be used for the main frame of the tip down. Each rip segment will give us approximately 1.71 tip downs. With our newly ripped 1-inch segments, we're going to be measuring 14 inches. We're going to need 4 of these 14-inch segments in order to build one tip down. One suggestion here is to take into account the width of the saw blade if you plan on measuring 14 inches across the entire board. With the scrap wood from the previous cut, measure 1 7/16 inch in order to make wood spacers. We're only going to need one for this project, but feel free to make more if you plan on doing more than one tip down. Now we're going to be taking our 2x4 and placing it in the horizontal direction and ripping 1-inch boards out of this. This piece will be used to make our base of our tip down. With these newly ripped boards, we're going to be measuring 6 inches. We're going to need 2 of these 6-inch segments in order for one tip down to be made. Now let's cut our aluminum tube into 1 5/16 inch segments. You're only going to need one of these per tip down, but again, feel free to make more if you plan on making more than one tip down. Here's a look at where that aluminum piece will fit within our tip downs in the finished product. The next part of this tip down building process is going to be drilling. And this is by far the hardest part of the whole operation. So just guys, remember to take your time and make sure you guys measure out everything correctly and don't rush it, because in the end, things can actually go really wrong when trying to assemble. If you plan on making more than one tip down, I'd actually recommend making a jig instead of individually measuring out each thing. It speeds up the process and makes sure you're accurate every time. Grabbing one of our 14-inch pieces, we're going to be putting a mark 3/8 inches from the top and 13/16 inch from the side, and we're going to be putting a drill where these two lines intersect, and it should look something like this. Now let's grab one more 14-inch piece holding the long end towards us. We're going to be drilling 3/8 inch from the bottom and 13/16 inch from the side. Place a mark. We're going to be using our 1/4 inch drill bit and drilling a hole where these two lines intersect. Do the same drilling on another piece, so you should have a total of 4 drilled 14-inch pieces. And now time for the assembly. We're now about to watch the fastest hands in the West assemble a tip down. Take our 5.5 inch bolt, slide a washer on there, take our smaller face 14-inch piece, slide that on. Again, washer on there. Now we're going to take the piece with the hole in the long face, slide that on there. Again, another washer. We're going to be doing a lot of washers here. Put on our aluminum spacer, another washer, and then we're going to be taking the same piece with the hole in the long face, another washer. Then we're going to be taking our piece with the hole in the smaller end, put it on there, and from here you're going to be trying to put on your washer, and you're going to be trying to put on your wing nut, but you're going to notice that the wing nut actually isn't going to be going on that well. So in order to compensate that, we're going to be taking off our washer, put on our wing nut, and tighten it up real snug, and this compresses the wood and makes it a little easier. So let's take that wing nut off. And we're going to slide back on that washer that we couldn't fit on previously, but you'll notice now that it actually will fit once we slide that on there. Don't mind me and my fumble fingers. I eventually learned how to screw on a wing nut, and I tighten it up real good. You're going to want to give your wing nut a couple turns, again, making sure everything's nice and snug. And as you can tell, it's rotating here, so we're going to have to grab a wrench in order to tighten this up, but that's all fine and dandy. So we're on to actually drilling on our baseboards. Here's an extremely rough look of what it's going to approximately look like. But in order to do this, we're going to take our tip down, make sure it's 90 degrees, and that's where really tightening it up helps. Make sure it's 90, flip it over on the table, and then we're going to take our baseboard piece, line it up to make sure that the tip down locks at 90 degrees. With the 1/8 inch drill, we're going to be drilling some holes. We're going to do a couple pre-drills to make sure nothing splits off because we're getting close to the edge. If you want to be fancy, you can counterbore to make sure that your screws are nice and flush. Then we're going to be taking 2 screws and putting them in our holes and making sure our baseboard is nice and tight. Then we're going to move to the back end, and this back end is extremely easy. All you have to do is line it up flush with the end of our tip down. Again, doing the same thing, drilling our holes, counterboring, and then putting our screws in. Whoever's putting those screws in deserves a raise. Comment down below who's your helping hand. So let's go ahead and put in our spacer. This is going to be 2 inches from the top to the top of our spacer. Let's go ahead and drill our spacer into place. We're going to be using our 1/8 inch drill bit. Punch a hole down right in the middle. Again, counterboring if you wanted to make sure it's flush. And then we're going to put our screws in and screw it in. This is going to be the same thing on the other side. So again, lining up our 1/8 inch drill bit, punching a hole down in the middle, counterboring if you want, and then putting our screw in and securing down our wood spacer. We are now extremely close to being done, but we have one more step before we can move on to the pole, and that is to cut a notch in the top part of our tip down hole. We used a saw, which worked all right, but I'm sure you guys could think of some better methods. Just big thing is you just want to make sure it's straight. Now we're going to have to find the counterbalance of our pole, but this can be kind of deceptive. So we're going to be measuring 2 7/8 inch on our brass rod. Cut that out with a hacksaw or any other method you guys choose. And this is going to be placed inside our pole to create sort of a fulcrum. Here's a little montage of me absolutely struggling to cut this brass rod. It is extremely hard to do. So we got to cut. Now we're going to really get a good sense of where the balance point is. A common mistake here is putting that brass rod exactly where it is perfectly balanced. And this is a huge mistake because you're going to have sinkers and your bait and everything on there. So what we recommend is find that balance point and move it back about a 1/4 inch. This to make sure your tip down will always be up and not facing down without a fish on it. Now to apply some brute Wisconsin strength, you're going to be pushing that 1/8 inch rod through that 7/64 inch hole. So if you're not feeling strong enough, feel free to tap somebody in who actually is. So when we get that brass rod about normal, about even with both sides, we now have ourselves a working functional tip down. If you like this video, don't forget to leave it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Thanks for watching.